Okay, this is another episode of Positive Parenting with Astrology with your resident Gemini, Maria Riegger. Today we're talking about how to reparent the Scorpio moon mother wound. This is largely a video directed toward those parents who have a Scorpio moon and who experienced a mother wound. So let me ask you, are you a parent who has a Scorpio moon placement in your natal chart? Did you have an emotionally distant mother? Do you have a mother wound? Did you have an emotionally abusive mother? Did you have any unmet emotional or psychological needs as a child? Are you learning how to parent yourself and reparent yourself now so that you can heal from your childhood trauma and be a better parent to your children? So if you answered yes to any of these questions, then this video is for you. We're going to talk about the significance of the moon in the natal chart in a minute, and then we're going to go into kind of how you can reparent yourself and heal from the mother wound. Now, first I want to point out, not everyone who has a Scorpio moon placement has a mother wound, but I want to emphasize this placement in terms of the mother wound in this video today, because number one, enough people who have this placement have the mother wound and mother related childhood trauma that I think it's worth talking about. Not only that, but if you have a Scorpio moon natal placement and you have trauma, childhood trauma related to the mother, it is especially difficult to heal from that trauma if you have a Scorpio moon placement, because the Scorpio moon placement is already so reserved and private and has a tendency to repress its emotional needs and its deep emotions, that when the child experiences trauma, that tendency to repress becomes even more intensified. So it is even more important to dig up all that old trauma, as painful as it is, in order to bring it to the surface and heal. And that process can be more difficult with a Scorpio moon placement, especially if you are someone who has a close relationship with someone with a Scorpio moon placement. It is harder to kind of get to the bottom of what they're all about. So that's why I want to emphasize this particular placement in this video. First, I want to talk about the significance of the moon placement in your chart. The moon represents the emotional life of the chart holder. It represents how you fulfill your emotional needs, how you recharge your energy if you need to. It also touches on kind of how you subconsciously respond or react to anything dealing with your emotions. So a fire moon will respond very differently from like an earth moon or a water moon. The moon can also represent the mother or the father. You'll hear a lot of astrologers say the moon always represents the mother of the chart holder. That's not 100% accurate. The moon can represent the father. It can represent the mother. In short, the moon largely represents, one of the things it represents for the chart holder is the one person or the most important person in the child's life who dealt with the emotional life of the child, or who was responsible for the emotional well-being of the child, or who served as a model for relationships for the child or the emotional health of the child. Okay, now that model can be good or bad. It's part of what we're going to talk about today, but that is another important aspect of the moon sign. It could be the person who took on a nurturing role with the child. That's not always the mother. It could be the father, could be an aunt, a relative, something like that. But the person who was responsible for how the child was nurtured. So Scorpio moon placement. If you've seen my videos on Scorpio children, my video on Scorpio moon children specifically, this information will not be new to you. So the position of the moon in the natal chart when it's in the sign of Scorpio, as we know, Scorpio is a water sign. It is a feminine energy sign, and it is a fixed sign. So water meaning that it comes more from a place or approaches the world more from a place of emotion and intuition rather than logic and practicality. And it being a feminine energy sign, it is more to do with intuition, response from a place of intuition than logic. Okay, it is more of a feeling, thinking, intuitive energy than a doing energy. The masculine energy signs, the fire signs, the air signs tend to be more about doing things, accomplishing things. Scorpio and the other feminine energy signs, so water and earth signs, are more about feeling, intuiting things. They have a really good kind of sense of intuition and gut feeling. They tend to be in their heads a little bit more. It's less about the doing energy and more about the kind of being, in a state of being. So as we know, Scorpio is a sign that feels very intensely. It has big emotions. Scorpio children have huge emotions. They can be prone to emotional outbursts. They can be prone to emotional overreaction. That is all normal for the sign. They are constantly feeling this intensity of emotion, and especially with Scorpio moon children, they do not understand or often know how to articulate these strong emotions that they are feeling. And this is where the parent can, one area where the parent can really help the Scorpio child to identify and articulate these feelings and understand that these feelings may be fleeting, that we don't have to wallow in them, that we can sit with them and recognize them and let them go. That is the healthy way to deal with emotions. But that is the kind of the crux of the Scorpio. They need to feel. They also need to feel and experience the entire range of human existence, including the good, the bad, the ugly. Kind of one of the quintessential takeaways I always talk about with Scorpio children are they would rather feel negative feelings than feel nothing. They have to feel. They would rather feel anything than feel nothing. Okay? So when your Scorpio child is having kind of big emotions or younger children are having tantrums, just remember that this is part of the Scorpio experience, and your job, one of your jobs as a parent, is to help them navigate these intense feelings that they're having. And one thing I like to point out here is, as we talked about, Scorpio moon people tend to kind of self-repress the emotions. Sometimes they feel even ashamed or embarrassed about the depth of emotion they're feeling. And if the parents suggest to them that they should not feel so deeply, they will repress even more. So it is extremely important the parent validate feelings, let them know that whatever they're feeling is okay, that they can identify and articulate the feelings, let them go. The parent can help them work through the feelings. When Scorpio moon children are taught that expressing feelings is a bad thing, they will repress even further into themselves, and it is even more difficult to reach them. And that brings up a whole host of challenges in their adult life. So it's one thing we don't want to do. We want to be really careful about not encouraging Scorpio moon children to repress feelings. We want to encourage them to talk about feelings. We want to make sure they understand that they don't need to be ashamed or embarrassed about feeling whatever it is that they feel. One of the great dichotomy about Scorpio people that I talk about a lot is that Scorpio is a sign that is constantly seeking attachment with others. It needs to feel connected to and attached to others. So obviously, Scorpio moon children need to feel attached and connected to the parents, especially the mother when the kids are very young. So you can already see that if there's any attachment issue with the mother does not attach to the child, does not respond to the child's emotional needs, does not pick a baby up when they're crying and need comfort, then this runs the great risk of the child growing up into an adult who has attachment issues, which we'll touch on. And a lot of adults we know have attachment issues. They are either attachment avoidant, like I am, or they kind of over-attach to people. So that's one thing you want to be very much concerned about with a Scorpio moon child, is you want to make sure there's a strong attachment with the mother. And part of this mother wound we're talking about is the Scorpio moon child just did not get the attachment they needed with the mom when they were a child, or with anyone who was in a nurturing role when they were a child. So while Scorpio moon people seek that attachment and vulnerability in relationships, they are, on the other hand, afraid of it, because Scorpio is afraid of being emotionally hurt. We talk about the sting of the scorpion, right? That's what Scorpio people do when they feel like they're about to be hurt very deeply. They'll hurt the other person first. Not always, but that's kind of a reaction. There's an old fable about what the frog that gives the scorpion a ride across the river, and the frog says, "Well, but you have to promise you're not going to sting me when we cross the river." And the scorpion says, "Of course, I promise I won't sting you. I won't sting you." And the frog gives the scorpion a ride across the river, and the scorpion stings the frog. And the frog becomes paralyzed, unable to swim. And the frog says, "Why did you do that? Now we're both going to drown. I can't swim." And the scorpion responds, "It is the only thing I know how to do," right? So a Scorpio moon child who has attachment problems, who has childhood trauma, may grow up into an adult who that's all they know how to do is hurt the other person before they are themselves hurt. So that's one of the things we're trying to avoid here, because Scorpio moon people, like almost everyone, dare I say everyone, need attachment and connection and vulnerability with other people, right? So you don't want to put them in a position where they're pushing that away because they're afraid of being hurt. It's just not a healthy way to behave in relationships. So as we mentioned earlier, Scorpio moon children need validation about their emotions from parents. They need to know that what they're feeling is okay, that it will not change the parents' love for them. The parents love them no matter what. That it is safe for the child to display emotion in front of the parent, to display vulnerability in front of the parent, that the parent will respect the Scorpio moon child's need for privacy and for being reserved and for sometimes kind of being focused on their internal world. Scorpio moon children need a very strong connection with the parent. They need to know the parent is present for them, not just to take care of their physical needs, but also present emotionally. If the parent is emotionally available when the Scorpio moon needs to talk about anything significant. And often you'll find that the very presence, just the presence of the parent, the physical presence, is very calming to the Scorpio moon child. You'll find that with young Scorpio sun and moon children. They just want the parent to be present. It doesn't mean they're going to grow up into a codependent adult because they want mom or dad there. They need to be comforted and calmed, and in that moment they need the presence of the parent. You'll find that a lot when kids are little and to go to sleep, because when we sleep we're very vulnerable. So this is a instinctual thing. They want the presence of the parent there as they're going to sleep because they feel so unprotected and vulnerable when they're about to sleep. So my point is sometimes the mere presence of the parent is enough to calm and comfort the Scorpio child. The big thing is that the Scorpio moon child will not always articulate that need because they don't know how to yet. They don't know how to say, hey, I need you here so I'm comforted. It will come out in different things like, I don't want to go to sleep by myself, right? Or I just want you here. I don't want to be far away from you. And that may seem clingy to you, especially if you're an air dominant person like I am, that may seem clingy to you. But that is all about the Scorpio child's need for attachment and comfort and connection with the parents. And as we'll talk about shortly, when the Scorpio moon child does not get that, that brings up a whole host of issues in adulthood. So what is the mother wound we're talking about? In short, it means that the child did not get the attachment and connection necessary from the mom or whoever was in a nurturing role. It did not get an attachment and connection to the nurturer when they were a child. The child did not receive sufficient emotional attention and support from parents. So this child's emotional needs were just not met. Now, that's the type of trauma we're talking about is kind of more of an attachment and emotional trauma. Obviously, there are all types of trauma, and we're not going to talk about everything today. And I am not a mental health professional. I'm not qualified to talk about all types of trauma and school you on that. But we're largely talking about when the bond or attachment that a child needs with his or her, with their nurturer, is just not present or deficient somehow. That's kind of what we're talking about here. So when babies are very young, obviously, we know they cry and need to be comforted. They don't have the words to articulate needs yet. They may be scared, or they may need a diaper change, or whatever, overtired, hungry. They cry, and the nurturer picks up and comforts them, right? That's the first way babies develop attachment. In my old job, I came across too frequently babies who were diagnosed with failure to thrive. Now, basically, that means that the baby does not get the attachment and connection from the mom that the baby needs. The mom doesn't pick the baby up when the baby cries, or doesn't respond right away when the baby's hungry, and the baby just shuts down, psychologically shuts down, doesn't eat, may not sleep a lot, and fails to grow. It's a medical condition called failure to thrive, and it's heartbreaking. So obviously that's an extreme example of when the baby doesn't get the attachment. So babies cry, you comfort them. That's the first step toward attachment with mother and child. Older children need kind of more of the emotional validation we're talking about. Emotional presence, emotional availability of the parent. And the parent accepts the emotional experience of the child. The parent may have responded differently when the parent was a child, but that doesn't mean that the child's experience is not valid just because it's not what the parent's experience was as a child. It is still valid. Whatever their experience is valid. Whatever they're feeling is valid. There are many ways to validate emotions. Parents can say, wow, that must have been difficult for you, or is there anything you'd like to talk about, or is there anything I can do or I can help you with, or I understand why you're upset about this. I hear you, I'm listening to you, all those things. So what many parents do, and it comes mostly from a good place, what many parents do is they see the child in a bad mood and they try to cheer the child up, or don't be sad, or you shouldn't be sad, or that's nothing to cry about, let's do this instead. But when you do that, you're also negating the child's feelings, and you're basically suggesting to the child that they don't have the right to feel that way, or they should not feel that way. And that's not a healthy thing to do. They have the right to feel however they feel. And if the child is upset about something that you consider trivial, which happens frequently, right? That's okay. Just because you consider it trivial doesn't mean it's trivial to the child. So I'll go over an example from my life. So my father died in a car accident when I was 11, and I remember as a teenager expressing to my mother that sometimes I miss my father, and I felt bad because I saw teenage girls with their dads hanging out and, you know, having fun, or my friends talk about stories with their dads, and I didn't have that. And my mother said, why are you upset about that? We have a good life. We have plenty of money. We go to the theater once in a while. That's literally what she said. We go to the theater once in a while. We have a good life. We have plenty of money. Why are you sad about that? Okay. It is perfectly okay to be grateful for what we have in our lives and to be upset about other things. Okay. Just because I had a roof over my head and clothes and went to the theater once in a while doesn't mean I don't have the right to be upset that my father died. Okay. So suffering is relative, right? And I hear that from a lot of parents. Oh, you should be grateful. Oh, look at everything we have. Well, yeah, but suffering is relative. So if you're telling the child they should be grateful to have all these material goods and go on these trips, you're telling them that those are the barometers by which fulfillment should be measured, and that's not the case, right? Because emotional fulfillment doesn't come from material things or whether you go to the theater or not. But my point is, a child can be grateful, anyone, child or adult, can be grateful for some of the things in their lives and still have the right to be upset about other things. So don't negate the child's emotional experience, bottom line. So another kind of general example from my life, I was always a child that had kind of big feelings. Even as a Gemini, people say, oh, Geminis are, don't feel anything. But I have other indicators in my chart that point to the intensity of feelings. My mother would tell me all the time, don't be dramatic. You're so dramatic. Don't be dramatic. You're so dramatic. Well, that basically, she taught me that showing any emotion was bad. And that is partly why when my kid was younger, I was so triggered when he's a Scorpio sun, as you know, if you watch his channel. I was so triggered, and kind of still am, when he shows these big, intense emotions, because I was not allowed to show them as a child, okay? So my point in sharing all of this with you is that validating emotions, accepting the emotional experience of the child, letting them come out of bad moods on their own, this all promotes healthy attachment and connection with mother and child. And this is what we want. So what happens when a child has this mother wound that we're talking about, where their emotional needs, psychological needs are not met? What happens? So the child tends to form unhealthy attachments as an adult, okay? And they display and could display an unhealthy attachment style. You could have somebody who overattaches. People with histrionic personality disorder or histrionic personality traits sometimes assume relationships and friendships to be more serious than they actually are. They may meet someone and all of a sudden feel this intense relationship and act like they're in this close relationship when the other person thinks it's just something casual. And I don't mean just romantic relationships, could be friendships too. They're essentially searching for the attachment and connection they did not get as a child. And you will tend to reenact that dynamic until you consciously do the healing. And those people, unfortunately, run the risk of being hurt often when it becomes clear to them the other person did not consider the friendship or relationship as important or as serious as they did. Now, the other kind of unhealthy attachment style we're going to talk about is the attachment avoidant person. That's me. Basically, that person psychologically thinks that all attachments are just disruptive and stressful and hurtful, so they avoid attachments. They always have kind of an escape plan. They're always thinking about, well, this is what I need. Do I really want to do this? Because if I do this, it's going to commit me. And then if I want to leave this friendship or relationship, it's going to be hard to do that. So they always have like a plan B. That's obviously not a healthy way to be either, because fear of commitment prevents you from having these close, vulnerable relationships and attachments and connections that humans thrive on. So that's the other kind of pitfall attachment style that can show up as an adult. You cannot get that relationship closeness that is so fulfilling unless you show some vulnerability. And that, for people who are attachment avoidant like me, that's very difficult to do. Showing that kind of vulnerability with another person is very difficult. So another negative effect of the smother wound is these kids grow up into adults who often self-sacrifice. They will always put needs of the other person first, become people pleasers, because they were essentially taught by the mother or their parents or their nurturer that their needs were not as important as the needs of others. That they have a hard time saying no, they have a hard time self-championing and asserting their own needs. They don't want to make people upset. Often they do things they don't want to do to avoid the other person being upset. Obviously, that's not healthy. You should self-advocate. You should self-champion. You should not do anything you're not comfortable with. So this is often something that is passed down in generations. A lot of this childhood trauma, unfortunately, if you've looked at the works of Gabor Mate, who I've talked about before, he's done a lot of research into kind of generational trauma and how this childhood trauma is perpetuated. So the self-sacrifice tendency is perpetuated. It certainly was in my family. My mother is a huge self-sacrificing individual. And I remember when I got pregnant with my son unexpectedly, the first year of law school, and then he was born in November, so I finished out the second year of law school. And that summer I was off work and off school, and I just relaxed. I just took advantage of that time where I didn't have to work or go to school or study, to bond with my baby, to rest, watch Netflix, eat, sleep, whatever, when he slept. Well, the house was, not orderly because I wasn't using all the time to just wash dishes and do laundry and vacuum and whatnot. So my mother came over to visit one day, and she looked at the house with disdain because she is a neat freak. And she looked at me and she said, "What do you do when the baby is sleeping?" And I said, "I rest and I take care of myself." Like, she expected me to self-sacrifice to the point of harming my health so the house looked perfect. I have a kid at home. I just finished my second year of law school and I was working full time. I took law school exams 2 weeks after my son was born. I think I deserve a couple months of just, resting and relaxing and bonding with my baby. So a lot of times our parents in that dynamic will make us feel bad for taking time for ourselves, for keeping ourselves healthy, for resting. Don't let anyone make you feel bad for resting or relaxing. And if they try to make you feel bad for resting or relaxing, really think about whether that's a person you even want to be around or you even want in your life, because I wouldn't. So the important stuff, how to reparent yourself from all this. If you suffer this kind of childhood trauma, this mother wound, as I have, how do you reparent yourself and heal from this in order to be a better parent to your child? It's hard work. I mean, there's no getting around that. It's tough because you're essentially learning how to be a kid again, right? To then be a better parent. So you're in this for the long haul. This is not an overnight thing, right? There's no magic pill. So first, you need to acknowledge that you suffered trauma and were a victim of trauma. And to this end, I've got a lot of book recommendations in the video description for you, because this is an area that obviously I'm not qualified to provide treatment for. But that's kind of the first big thing, is that you need to acknowledge you were the victim of trauma. Maybe your mother, your parent, your nurturer didn't know any better, but that doesn't excuse the trauma you suffered, right? So grieve the parenting that you did not receive, that you should have received. We all deserved parents who nurtured us, who did not treat us as extensions of themselves, who provided for emotional security, who did not tell us to stop crying, who hugged us, who comforted us, who did not gaslight us. We all deserved parents like that. And for those of us who did not get that, grieve the parenting that you did not receive and allow yourself to go through all the stages of grief. The anger, I still have a lot of anger toward my mother for how I was treated as a child. I feel like she should have known better because she was treated the same way by her mother. I feel like she should have known better and she should have done her own healing, because even though we're not responsible for the trauma we suffered as children, we are responsible for our own healing. I am responsible for not perpetuating that with my kid, right? And you are too. Every child deserves good parents. Every child deserves emotional support. Every child is worthy, not because they get good grades, not because they're obedient. Every child is worthy because they are a human being, period, the end. Now, this is a thing I always emphasize too. Practice radical self-care. Give yourself everything you needed as a child. What do you feel like doing today? Wrapping yourself in a blanket and drinking tea and watching Netflix? Do it. What do you feel like doing today? Playing video games? That's what I'm going to be doing. As soon as I'm done this video, I'm going to be grinding on the PC because that's what I like to do in my free time. So give yourself everything you needed as a kid. Allow yourself to do the things you didn't get to do as a kid. Allowing yourself to be a child is a wonderful thing because your own kids will love it. Your own kids will love your inner child, right? I'm always the parent, as I've said in other videos, that is on the playground, running around, chasing the kids, sliding down the slides with them while the other parents are kind of looking at their phones and sitting down. I love to have fun with the kids. I always joke with my adult friends, I'm like, people are always leaving their kids with me. Like, I'm a big kid myself, and I realize it's because the kids love hanging out with me because I'm always playing with them. Like, my son loves it when I play with him and his friends on the PC, right? We play video games together. In fact, some of our greatest memories are from gaming together. And when my kid was little, he and his friends loved it when I would chase him around, play tag in the playground. They would always ask me, Miss Maria, will you be the monster? Will you play tag with us? Will you chase us? Because I was almost always the only parent who would do it. So your kids will love your inner child you're tapping into. Allow yourself to be a child, right? If you didn't get a good childhood experience, you deserve that. So my point is, take care of yourself. Give yourself the things you needed as a child. Say no more often. Establish firm boundaries. This is tough if you were taught to self-sacrifice like I was, if you were taught to be a people pleaser like I was. Set firm boundaries. And if people get mad, forget them. Just forget them. Mute them, block them, don't talk to them. If they get mad, oh well. If somebody's going to get mad because you have a boundary, like, are they really somebody you want to be around? So think about that. Say no more often. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to isolate if you need to recharge your energy. Having to continually establish and set and reset firm boundaries takes a lot of energy. I'm telling you from experience. And if you're an introvert like I am, it takes even more energy. So you're going to need to rest maybe more often if you're doing that. So remember that. Remember the quote by Warren Buffett. The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. Now, you may not define success as financial success a la Warren Buffett. That's fine. That's not how I define success either. But however you define success, right? Maybe it's saying no to more things so that you have more time for yourself, or you have more time to travel, or you have more time to read, or you have more time to cook, or paint, or spend with your kid, or write. That's fine. If you say no more often to people, you have more time to focus on what you want to do. And if you were a kid like me who rarely got to do what they wanted to do, I am almost militant about getting to do what I like to do because I didn't get to do a lot of the things I wanted to as a kid. And even as a teenager, I remember I did not get to decide what I did for my birthday, things like that. I decide that now. I'm the captain now, right? So you're in charge of your life. Say no. Somebody asks you to volunteer at school and you don't feel like it. Say no. Hey, you want to come over and do a play date? I don't feel like it today. No, but we'll do it another day. Do you feel like going out tonight? No. Or can you help me review this resume? I can't do it this week. I'll let you know when I'm free. Sorry. Life is full of people asking us for favors. I'm not saying not to do favors. I'm not saying not to help people. But the people asking you for favors don't know what's going on in your life. They don't know the pressure you may be facing and the fact that other people are asking you for help all the time. Because if you were raised to be a helper like me, your natural inclination is going to be to want to help people. And as I say often, helping very often becomes enabling. I get questions all the time about things that I don't know that I'd have to research. And I used to just research them for people, like friends of mine to do favors for. And now I think, well, my friends can research this stuff on their own. If I'm researching it because I don't know about it, they can research just as well. So I just say, no, sorry, I don't know about that, and they can do their own research. Why should I spend my time doing that? So be very guarded with your time. To that end, stop overcommitting to projects, okay? Think about things before you commit to them and make your mental and physical health a priority, right? Very often I find that just getting outside for a walk makes me feel so much better. In fact, that happened yesterday. I just kind of didn't want to go. I was kind of sedentary at home, and I had promised myself I would take the younger dog for a hike, and I did. We went into the woods, and I felt exponentially better, and I had more energy afterward, and just getting the fresh air was fantastic. So make sure you are prioritizing your mental and physical health. Mark it on the calendar, days you're going to work out if you so choose, things like that. Now, lastly, I have a few book recommendations for you in the video description below, and if you have any questions, email me, comment below, and thank you for your attention, and have a great new year.